Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness accounts. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, get comfortable. Let your breathing slow. Let the silence settle in around you. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place people associate with routine and structure, a large self-storage facility on the edge of a growing city. Rows of metal doors lined long corridors. Surveillance cameras were posted at entrances, and customers accessed their units using personalized codes. People believed their belongings were safe there, locked away, untouched, and forgotten. For years, nothing unusual was reported. Then a customer complained that items inside her unit had been moved. Nothing was missing, but boxes had been rearranged. Management assumed she was mistaken. Storage units blurred together after all. Weeks later, another customer made a similar complaint. Then another. Each time, staff checked access logs and found no irregularities. Only authorized codes had been used. The incidents were dismissed. Then a man who visited his unit several nights a week stopped responding to messages. His family reported him missing after discovering his car parked outside the facility. His access code had been used to enter the building, but he never exited. His unit door was partially open. The light inside was still on. Police initially believed he may have left through an emergency exit. But when another customer disappeared months later under nearly identical circumstances, investigators began to take the facility seriously. Reviewing security footage revealed long stretches of time with no visible activity. Cameras covered entrances and driveways, but not interior corridors. Anyone familiar with the layout could move unseen once inside. Attention turned to a man who worked part-time at the facility. He handled maintenance, assisted customers, and often worked alone in the evenings. He was friendly, helpful, and trusted. Customers recognized him as someone who belonged. Access records revealed his code had been used frequently during late-night hours, often overlapping with the missing individual's visits. When questioned, he said he stayed late to clean units or help customers who forgot their codes. His explanations initially seemed reasonable, but a search of unused storage units revealed something disturbing. Behind stacked boxes, investigators found personal items belonging to missing customers. Wallets, keys, phones, items that had no resale value but were unmistakably personal. Former customers were interviewed again. This time, they shared stories they had dismissed. Someone standing quietly behind them while they unlocked their unit. Someone offering help that felt unnecessary. Someone watching without speaking. One woman described noticing the same employee every time she visited late at night. When she changed her schedule, he stopped appearing. Her account helped investigators understand how he relied on predictability. Further investigation uncovered handwritten notes in his locker. Unit numbers. Visit times. Observations about who came alone and how long they stayed. Some entries were crossed out. Others circled. During questioning, he admitted that storage facilities were ideal. Quiet. Isolated. Little oversight once inside. People distracted by their tasks. He said most customers assumed no one else was nearby. The case sent shockwaves through the community. Storage facilities were redesigned with better lighting and cameras. Policies were updated. But for many customers, the sense of safety never returned. This story is disturbing because it happened in a place meant to store the past, memories, possessions, pieces of life, yet became a place where people themselves vanished quietly. True crime reminds us that danger doesn't always hide in dark alleys. Sometimes it waits in ordinary places, behind familiar doors, relying on routine to stay invisible. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware. Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness accounts. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, get comfortable. Let your breathing slow. Let the quiet settle in. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading you. If you enjoy these true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place most people only visit briefly, a suburban bus terminal that connected several small towns to the city. It wasn't large or crowded. Just a handful of platforms, a waiting room, vending machines, and restrooms that stayed open late for overnight routes. People passed through without paying much attention to one another. For years, nothing unusual was reported. Then a college student who regularly took the late bus home stopped showing up to class. Her friends assumed she had transferred or moved. Weeks later, a man who worked night shifts downtown failed to return home. His family later learned he had boarded a bus from the same terminal. At first, the cases weren't connected. Different ages, different destinations, different lives. But a transit officer noticed something strange while reviewing ticket records. Both missing individuals had waited at the terminal for over an hour before boarding. Both had arrived early. Both had been alone. Security footage from the terminal was limited. Cameras covered entrances and ticket counters, but not every corner of the waiting area. Footage showed each missing person sitting quietly, scrolling on their phone, occasionally looking up. In the background, the same man appeared more than once, sitting, standing, pacing slowly near the vending machines. He didn't approach quickly. He waited. Sometimes he sat several seats away. Sometimes he left the frame entirely, only to return minutes later. He blended into the environment perfectly, looking like just another tired commuter. As police reviewed older footage, they found him appearing again and again on nights tied to other unresolved missing persons cases. Always late. Always unhurried. Always present before someone vanished. Investigators learned that the man worked nearby as a night custodian for several businesses. His schedule aligned perfectly with the terminal's quietest hours. He knew when staff numbers were low. He knew which buses ran overnight and which platforms were poorly lit. Former terminal employees were interviewed. One recalled seeing him escort passengers toward restrooms or exits, assuming he was helping them find their bus. Another remembered him sitting in the waiting room long after cleaning crews had finished, doing nothing in particular. A breakthrough came when a woman reported a close call. She described being approached by a man who offered to help her carry her bag to a different platform, claiming her bus had changed gates. She followed briefly but felt uneasy and turned back. When she reported the incident later, her description matched the man seen repeatedly in footage. Police searched his apartment and found notebooks filled with handwritten schedules, bus routes, departure times, notes about who traveled alone and which routes were sparsely populated. He had circled certain departure windows and crossed out dates after disappearances. Personal items belonging to multiple missing individuals were found carefully stored: bus passes, phones, wallets. Items taken not for money, but for possession. For confirmation. Investigators discovered that he rarely acted inside the terminal itself. Instead, he guided people toward poorly lit service corridors, restrooms, or exterior areas not covered by cameras. From there, he relied on isolation and confusion. Perhaps the most unsettling detail was how normal his behavior appeared. He never rushed, never raised his voice, never forced anyone. He relied on politeness, authority, and the assumption that someone offering help in a public place was harmless. The terminal changed after the arrests. Lighting was improved. Cameras were added. Staff presence increased overnight. But for many commuters, the routine was permanently altered. People arrived later, stayed near others, and paid closer attention to who was around them. This story is disturbing because it unfolded in a place meant for brief transitions. A place where people are tired, distracted, and focused on getting home. It didn't rely on violence or chaos. It relied on patience, familiarity, and the quiet moments between departures. True crime reminds us that danger doesn't always appear suddenly. Sometimes it waits calmly, blending into the background, trusting routine to keep it invisible. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told slowly, calmly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware. Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness accounts. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, get comfortable. Let your breathing slow. Let the quiet of the room settle around you. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy these true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place most people consider unremarkable, a large suburban shopping center that stayed open late. It wasn't a mall, just a cluster of stores surrounding a wide parking lot, grocery, pharmacy, discount retail, a few restaurants. People came and went all day and night, often alone, often distracted. For years, nothing seemed wrong. Security patrols were minimal but visible. Cameras covered entrances and drive lanes. Shoppers assumed that the constant flow of cars and people meant safety. The first incident was easy to ignore. A woman reported that someone had approached her car late at night and asked for help finding a lost phone. She declined and drove away. She told friends about it but never reported it. Nothing bad happened. Weeks later, another shopper described a similar interaction. Someone lingering near her car. Someone asking questions that felt unnecessary. She brushed it off as awkward but harmless. Then a man who worked night shift stopped answering calls. His family later discovered his car still parked in the shopping center lot. The vehicle was locked. His phone and wallet were inside. Security footage showed him walking toward his car after a late-night grocery run. He was never seen leaving. Police initially believed it was an isolated case. People vanished for many reasons. But months later, another car was found in the same lot under similar circumstances. Then another. Detectives began reviewing hours of surveillance footage. The cameras captured wide angles of the lot but not close detail between rows of cars. In multiple cases, a figure could be seen moving between vehicles just before disappearances. The figure never ran, never hurried. Sometimes it paused beside a car, then walked away. Investigators noticed a pattern. The same individual appeared on different nights, often wearing different clothing, but moving the same way. He arrived on foot from the edge of the lot and left the same way. He never parked a car. Attention turned to a man who lived nearby and worked sporadic jobs. He was familiar to some store employees, often seen late at night buying small items or sitting on benches outside restaurants. He was described as quiet, polite, and forgettable. When questioned, he said he liked walking at night and often passed through the shopping center. Nothing about that was illegal. But access records from nearby stores showed him entering and exiting without making purchases, sometimes multiple times in one night. Former shoppers were interviewed again. This time, more details surfaced. Someone knocking on a car window to ask for directions. Someone offering to help carry groceries. Someone standing too close while pretending to look for keys. Each interaction on its own seemed harmless. Together, they formed a pattern. A breakthrough came when a woman reported a near encounter. She noticed a man circling her car slowly as she loaded groceries. When she locked the doors and waited inside, he stood several spaces away, watching. When another car pulled in nearby, he walked off calmly. Her description matched the individual seen in footage. Police searched the area surrounding the shopping center and discovered a narrow service road hidden behind trees and fencing. It wasn't well lit and wasn't monitored by cameras. From there, it was possible to observe the parking lot without being seen. In a makeshift camp hidden near the service road, investigators found personal items belonging to multiple missing people. Keys, identification cards, watches, items taken carefully and kept. Not sold. Not discarded. As the investigation expanded, detectives learned that the suspect targeted people based on routine. He watched who shopped late, who parked far from entrances, who lingered in their car checking messages. He avoided groups, avoided attention. He waited for isolation. During questioning, he admitted that the parking lot was ideal. He said people felt safe because they were close to stores, because lights were on, because other cars were nearby. He relied on that false sense of security. He also admitted that he never rushed. He waited for moments when people were distracted, putting groceries away, searching for keys, answering a phone. He described those moments as predictable. Perhaps the most unsettling detail was how many opportunities there had been to notice something was wrong. Complaints that weren't reported. Incidents that were brushed aside because nothing happened. A belief that public places couldn't hide danger. After the case became public, other shoppers came forward. Some remembered being followed to their car. Others recalled seeing the same man sitting in the lot night after night. At the time, they assumed he was just another shopper waiting for someone. The shopping center changed quickly. Security patrols increased. Lighting was improved. Cameras were added between parking rows. Signs encouraged shoppers to walk together and report suspicious behavior. But for many people, the sense of ease never returned. This story is disturbing because it happened in a place designed for convenience and familiarity. A place people visit without thinking. It didn't rely on force or chaos. It relied on distraction, routine, and the assumption that danger would look obvious. True crime often reminds us that awareness isn't about fear. It's about attention. It's about noticing patterns and trusting discomfort before it becomes something worse. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware. Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness accounts. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, get comfortable. Let your breathing slow and steady. Let the quiet settle in around you. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy these true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place people associate with calm repetition, a neighborhood walking trail that wound through parks, wooded areas, and residential streets. It was well maintained, clearly marked, and used daily by joggers, dog walkers, and cyclists. Locals considered it one of the safest places in the area. For years, nothing seemed wrong. People greeted each other in passing. Familiar faces appeared at the same times each morning or evening. That familiarity bred comfort, and comfort slowly turned into assumption. The first warning came quietly. A woman reported that someone had been following her during her evening walks. She said the man kept a distance but matched her pace, slowing when she slowed, stopping when she stopped. When she turned around, he pretended to stretch or check his phone. Police told her it was likely coincidence. Weeks later, another walker described a similar experience. Then another. Each report was vague. No threats. No direct confrontation. Nothing concrete enough to pursue. Then a jogger didn't come home. He was a middle-aged man who ran the same route every evening after work. When his family reported him missing, police searched the trail and nearby areas. His car was parked at the usual entrance. His phone was found near a bench along the path. There were no signs of a struggle. Authorities assumed a medical emergency or accident. But months later, a woman who walked the trail early each morning vanished under similar circumstances. Her dog was found wandering near the path. Her belongings were neatly placed beside it. Investigators began reviewing reports and realized all the disappearances shared the same stretch of trail, a quieter section where trees grew close and visibility was limited. It wasn't isolated, but it felt that way. Security cameras covered parking areas and nearby streets, but not the trail itself. Anyone familiar with the area could move unseen once they stepped onto the path. Residents were interviewed again. This time, people began remembering small things they had dismissed. A man standing just off the trail, watching silent. Someone appearing from the woods and disappearing again without explanation. A feeling of being observed that went away as soon as others appeared. A breakthrough came when a cyclist reported a close call. He noticed the same man several times along the trail, always appearing ahead of him despite taking different turns. When the cyclist stopped abruptly, the man turned and walked into the trees without explanation. His description matched earlier reports. Police set up discreet surveillance along the trail during peak hours. They observed a man who walked the path daily but never completed a full loop. He entered at different points, lingered in certain areas, and left without explanation. He carried no phone, no visible gear, and never interacted with others. A search of his residence uncovered detailed maps of the trail system. Certain areas were circled. Times of day were written in the margins. Notes described traffic patterns, blind spots, and seasonal changes in foliage that affected visibility. Investigators also found personal items belonging to multiple missing people, water bottles, fitness watches, earbuds. Items taken carefully and kept. Not sold. Not discarded. Former trail users came forward after the arrest. One woman recalled a man offering to help her look for a lost dog she hadn't mentioned. Another remembered being asked which direction she usually walked. At the time, the question seemed friendly. During questioning, the suspect admitted that he chose the trail because of its rhythm. People moved predictably. They wore headphones. They expected solitude but assumed safety. He relied on that contradiction. He also admitted that he never rushed. He waited for moments when people were alone and distracted. When the sound of footsteps faded. When routine made them less alert. The case changed the community. Lighting was added along the trail. Emergency call stations were installed. Volunteer patrols were organized. But for many residents, the trail never felt the same again. This story is disturbing because it unfolded in a place people used to clear their minds and feel healthy. A place built for movement and calm. It didn't rely on force or chaos. It relied on routine, isolation, and the belief that danger wouldn't exist somewhere so familiar. True crime reminds us that awareness isn't about fear. It's about attention. It's about trusting small signals and understanding that even peaceful places can hide patterns worth noticing. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware. Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness accounts. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, get comfortable. Let the noise of the day fade. Let your breathing slow. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place people rarely think of as dangerous, a quiet medical office building that closed promptly at 5 o'clock every evening. During the day, it was busy and well lit, filled with patients, staff, and the low hum of routine care. At night, it became something else entirely, silent hallways, locked offices, and long stretches of emptiness broken only by the occasional cleaning crew. For years, nothing unusual was reported. Then a receptionist at a dental practice noticed something strange. Files on her desk had been moved after hours. Not taken, just rearranged. She assumed the cleaning staff had bumped them. She mentioned it casually, and everyone laughed it off. A few weeks later, a therapist working late heard footsteps outside her office long after the building had closed. She opened the door and saw no one. The security desk told her it was probably an HVAC technician or a cleaner running behind. She believed them. Then a medical billing clerk failed to show up for work. She was reliable, quiet, and lived alone. When she didn't answer calls, police were asked to perform a welfare check. Her apartment was locked from the inside. Nothing appeared disturbed. Her phone was on the nightstand. Her car was parked in its usual spot. There were no signs of forced entry. At first, investigators suspected a personal issue. Maybe she had left town. Maybe she needed time away. But friends insisted that didn't fit. She had been excited about an upcoming trip. She had plans. Months passed. Then another employee from the same building disappeared. This time, it was a night janitor who worked alone after hours. His co-workers assumed he had quit without notice. It wasn't until his family reported him missing that police realized the connection. Detectives began examining the building more closely. They reviewed security footage, which revealed long stretches of time with no recorded activity. Cameras covered entrances and main corridors, but many interior hallways and offices were not monitored. Anyone familiar with the layout could move through the building unseen. Attention turned to a man who worked as a contracted security guard. He wasn't assigned to the building full-time, but he filled in regularly during overnight shifts. Staff described him as polite, quiet, and professional. He wore the uniform. He followed procedures. He blended in. Access logs showed that his key card had been used at unusual hours, often long after his shifts officially ended. When questioned, he explained that he stayed late to finish reports or conduct extra patrols. At first, his answers seemed reasonable. But investigators noticed something unsettling in the footage they did have. On several nights connected to the disappearances, he could be seen entering the building hours before his shift and leaving well after. Sometimes he carried nothing. Sometimes he carried a small bag. He always moved calmly, never rushing. Police searched his vehicle and found notebooks filled with dates, times, and names. Some were crossed out. Others were circled. Many belonged to people who worked in or frequently visited the building. He had noted routines, who stayed late, who worked alone, who took which stairway. A search of a storage unit rented in his name revealed personal belongings from multiple victims. Identification badges, prescription bottles, watches, items taken not for money, but for possession. For proof. As the investigation expanded, detectives uncovered earlier complaints that had never been connected. A nurse practitioner recalled finding her office door unlocked when she was certain she had locked it. A patient remembered seeing a security guard inside a restricted hallway where he shouldn't have been. A cleaner once reported someone standing silently at the end of a corridor, watching her work, then walking away without speaking. Perhaps the most disturbing discovery came when police examined the building's ceiling access points. Above several offices, panels had been removed and replaced. Inside the crawl spaces, investigators found evidence that someone had been moving through them, dust disturbed, insulation compressed, small personal items dropped accidentally and left behind. He had been watching from above. The suspect admitted during questioning that he preferred places like the medical building. He said people trusted uniforms. They assumed authority. They didn't want to question someone who appeared to belong. He relied on that hesitation. He also admitted that he spent months observing before acting. He learned schedules. Learned which doors were rarely used. Learned which lights were left on late. He described the building as quiet, predictable, and forgiving of small irregularities. In one narrowly avoided case, a staff member arrived early for an appointment and noticed someone exiting her office. When she asked what he was doing, he calmly told her he was responding to an alarm. There had been no alarm. She believed him anyway. It wasn't until much later that she realized how close she had come. As news spread, former employees began sharing experiences they had dismissed at the time. Sounds in empty hallways. The feeling of being watched. The sense that someone had been inside their office without permission. All of it made sense now. The case revealed how environments built on routine and trust can become dangerous when oversight is limited. Medical buildings, like many professional spaces, are designed to feel controlled and safe. But that sense of security can hide blind spots, literal and psychological. In the aftermath, policies changed. Access was restricted. Cameras were added. Contractors were monitored more closely. But for many, the damage was already done. People struggled to return to work without replaying memories of quiet hallways and flickering lights. This story is unsettling because it didn't unfold in darkness or isolation. It happened in a place associated with care, professionalism, and order. It happened quietly, patiently, and over time. True crime often reminds us that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it wears a uniform. Sometimes it follows the rules just enough to avoid attention. Sometimes it waits in silence, counting on routine to do the rest. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, let me know where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware. Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness accounts. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, settle in. Let your body relax. Let the background noise fade. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy these true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place people associate with rest and routine, a long-term care facility on the edge of a small town. It wasn't a hospital, but it wasn't quite a home either. Residents lived there for months or years, supported by rotating staff, visiting family members, and a strict daily schedule that rarely changed. The facility had a good reputation. Families trusted it. Inspections were always passed. Staff turnover was low. Nothing about the building or its employees raised concern, until subtle inconsistencies began to appear. It started with medication discrepancies. Small ones. A pill missing here. A dosage logged at a time when the patient was asleep. Nurses assumed it was a paperwork issue. Charts were corrected and life moved on. Then a resident died unexpectedly. He was elderly, but stable. His condition hadn't changed in months. His death was attributed to natural causes. The family was saddened but not suspicious. Within weeks, another resident passed away under similar circumstances. Then another. Each death on its own made sense. But a nurse who had worked night shifts for years began to feel uneasy. She noticed that the deaths often occurred during the same overnight hours. Always quiet. Always calm. No alarms. No emergencies. She reported her concerns to management. They reviewed records and found nothing conclusive. The facility continued operating as usual. Months later, a resident was found unresponsive but survived after being rushed to a hospital. Blood tests revealed medication levels far higher than prescribed. The explanation was unclear. The doctor assumed a mistake had been made. The resident couldn't communicate clearly enough to explain what had happened. That incident changed everything. Authorities began a quiet investigation. They reviewed staff schedules, medication logs, and security footage. One name appeared repeatedly. A senior caregiver who worked mostly overnight shifts. He was known as dependable, calm, someone who volunteered for extra hours. Families praised him for being attentive. Security footage showed him entering rooms without logging visits. Sometimes he stayed longer than necessary. Sometimes he stood beside beds without performing any obvious tasks. Always quiet. Always unhurried. Investigators discovered that he had access to medication storage and understood dosage systems better than most. He knew which residents had no visitors, which families lived far away, which patients wouldn't be able to describe what they felt. When police searched his locker and vehicle, they found handwritten notes, room numbers, names, times, observations about sleep patterns and medical conditions. Some names were crossed out, others circled. Former staff members were interviewed again. This time, they shared things they had dismissed before. The caregiver spending too long in darkened rooms. The way he insisted on handling certain residents alone. How he discouraged family visits late at night, claiming residents needed rest. One nurse remembered catching him sitting silently beside a patient who was already asleep. When asked what he was doing, he said he was keeping them company. She didn't question it at the time. As investigators connected the timeline, it became clear that his actions had gone unnoticed because they blended into caregiving routines. In a place where people expect vulnerability, dependence, and quiet, small deviations didn't stand out. During questioning, he admitted that he preferred environments where people were already fragile, where death wasn't unexpected, where authority figures were trusted without question. He described the facility as predictable, controlled, safe from scrutiny. The revelation devastated families and staff alike. People replayed memories, wondering how many signs they had missed, how often kindness had been mistaken for care, how trust had been exploited. The facility implemented immediate changes. Medication controls were tightened. Overnight staffing increased. Cameras were installed in hallways. But the sense of violation lingered long after. This story is disturbing not because it involved chaos or violence, but because it unfolded quietly, behind closed doors, in a place built on trust and compassion. It reminds us that danger doesn't always look threatening. Sometimes it looks responsible. Sometimes it looks helpful. True crime teaches us that awareness matters, even in places we assume are safe by design. That trust should never replace oversight. And that listening to quiet discomfort can make a difference. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware. Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness statements. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, get comfortable. Let your breathing even out. Let the outside world grow distant. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy these true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place associated with safety and routine, a small neighborhood gym that stayed open 24 hours a day. It wasn't a large facility. Just a few workout rooms, lockers, showers, and a front desk that was often unattended late at night. Members used key cards to enter, and most people visited at the same times every week. For years, nothing seemed unusual. Then a woman reported that her locker had been opened while she was showering. Nothing was missing. She assumed she had forgotten to lock it. A few weeks later, another member complained that someone had been inside the locker room while it was supposed to be empty. The complaint was noted, but no action was taken. Then a regular stopped coming. He was a man in his late 20s who worked early mornings and exercised late at night. Staff noticed his absence but assumed he had changed gyms. Months later, a woman who also frequented the gym during overnight hours vanished. Her car was found in the parking lot. Her gym bag was inside. She had never checked out. Police initially treated the cases separately, but when they reviewed access logs, a pattern emerged. A single key card appeared repeatedly during overnight hours, often entering shortly before or after the missing members. The card belonged to a man who had been a member for years. He was familiar to staff. Quiet, polite, someone who kept to himself. He often offered to help new members understand the equipment. No one found him strange. Security footage revealed that he spent long stretches of time sitting in common areas, not exercising. He watched people come and go. He learned routines. He learned who came alone and who stayed late. He also learned which cameras didn't fully cover locker room entrances. Investigators later discovered he had tampered with a maintenance door leading to a utility hallway that connected several areas of the gym. It allowed movement without being seen from the main floor. In that hallway, police found personal items belonging to multiple missing members, keys, earbuds, identification cards. Former members began coming forward once the investigation became public. Several described uncomfortable encounters they had dismissed at the time. Someone standing too close in empty rooms. Someone watching from mirrors. Someone offering help that felt unnecessary but harmless. One survivor described noticing the same man sitting in his car every time she left the gym at night. When she changed her schedule, he disappeared. Her account helped confirm that the suspect followed patterns, not people, waiting for predictability to create opportunity. When questioned, the man admitted that he preferred places open overnight. He said people were tired, distracted, and assumed no one else was paying attention. He relied on that shared exhaustion. He described the gym as quiet, controlled, and forgiving of small irregularities. The most unsettling detail was how many signs had been present without being connected. Logs reviewed but not analyzed. Complaints filed but not escalated. Cameras installed but not monitored consistently. Everything worked just well enough to create a false sense of security. After the arrests, the gym closed temporarily. Access systems were replaced. Overnight hours were eliminated. But for many members, the damage was already done. A place once associated with routine and self-care now carried an undercurrent of unease. This story is disturbing because it unfolded in a place people visited to feel better, stronger, and safer. It didn't rely on chaos or force. It relied on routine, familiarity, and silence. True crime reminds us that danger doesn't always interrupt. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it blends in. And sometimes it hides in places we trust the most. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, let me know where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware. Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness accounts. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, get comfortable. Let your breathing slow. Let the world outside fade into the background. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place people often associate with calm and productivity, a shared office workspace that operated 24 hours a day. Freelancers, remote employees, and small business owners rented desks and offices, coming and going at all hours. The environment was quiet, modern, and designed to feel safe through access cards and minimal staff presence overnight. During the day, the building was busy. At night, it was nearly silent. Only a handful of people worked late, usually the same ones, following predictable schedules. Over time, they recognized each other without ever exchanging names. The first incident seemed minor. A woman noticed her desk drawers had been opened overnight. Nothing was missing. She assumed cleaning staff had been careless. A week later, another member reported that files on his computer had been accessed, though nothing appeared altered. Management advised changing passwords and moved on. Then one of the regular overnight members stopped coming. He was a software developer who worked alone after midnight several nights a week. When his clients couldn't reach him, they assumed he was busy or on a deadline. Days passed. Then weeks. Eventually, his family reported him missing. Police reviewed security footage from the building. The cameras covered entrances and common areas but not individual offices or corridors between them. Footage showed the man arriving late one night and entering the workspace. He was never recorded leaving. Investigators initially believed he may have left through an exit not covered by cameras. But when another overnight member vanished months later under similar circumstances, attention turned inward. Access logs revealed a troubling pattern. One access card appeared repeatedly during the same overnight windows, often entering shortly before the missing members and leaving long after. The card belonged to a man who rented a small office near the back of the building. He was described by others as quiet and professional. Someone who always nodded politely but never engaged in conversation. He often stayed late, sometimes sleeping on a couch in a common area. No one thought much of it. As detectives reviewed footage more closely, they noticed something unsettling. The man frequently walked the corridors without entering his office. He paused near closed doors. He waited in darkened areas where cameras didn't reach. Sometimes he followed others at a distance, stopping when they stopped. A search warrant revealed hidden storage compartments inside his rented office. Inside were personal items belonging to multiple missing individuals. Laptops, identification cards, notebooks, items taken carefully and kept in order. Further investigation uncovered complaints that had never been connected. A woman recalled feeling watched while working late, sensing movement behind her glass office wall. Another remembered someone trying her door handle late at night, then walking away when it didn't open. Each incident had been dismissed as imagination or a simple misunderstanding. One member narrowly avoided becoming another victim. He noticed the same man appearing behind him multiple times throughout the night. When he pretended to take a phone call and left early, the man followed him into the parking garage. Only when he approached a group of people did the follower turn back. His report helped confirm police suspicions. Investigators learned that the suspect had chosen the workspace because of its structure. Minimal staff, long hours, limited oversight, people distracted by work and headphones. He relied on the assumption that anyone inside belonged there. During questioning, he admitted that he preferred environments where people were focused inward. He said exhaustion made people less observant, less likely to question small irregularities. He described his actions as slow and deliberate. The case shocked the community. Members replayed memories of quiet nights and dim hallways, of doors clicking softly, of footsteps they had ignored. The building changed its policies almost immediately, restricted hours, increased staffing, additional cameras. But the sense of unease lingered. This story is unsettling because it unfolded in a place meant to foster creativity and independence. It didn't rely on force or chaos. It relied on silence, routine, and the belief that systems were watching, even when they weren't. True crime reminds us that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits quietly nearby, waiting for predictability to make things easy. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware.
Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves come from documented investigations, court records, and witness statements. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, settle in. Let your breathing slow. Let the tension of the day fade away. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you find yourself coming back for these true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a town built around convenience. Everything people needed was close by: shops, schools, offices, and walking paths that connected neighborhoods like quiet arteries. People felt safe here. Familiar faces passed each other every day. That sense of familiarity was exactly what allowed something dark to exist unnoticed for so long. The first warning sign came in the form of a complaint that went nowhere. A woman reported that someone had been inside her house while she was away. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was broken. But she was certain something had changed. A chair was angled differently. A cupboard door was left slightly open. Police told her it was likely stress or forgetfulness. Weeks later, another resident reported something similar. Then another. Each time, officers found no signs of forced entry. Doors and windows were intact. No alarms were triggered. The reports were logged and quietly dismissed. Then someone went missing. The victim was a man in his early 40s who lived alone and worked predictable hours. He was last seen walking home from a grocery store less than a mile from his house. His groceries were later found in his kitchen, partially unpacked. The front door was locked. His phone and wallet were gone. There was no evidence of a struggle. Police initially believed he had left voluntarily, but friends insisted that didn't make sense. He had plans. He had responsibilities. He wouldn't just disappear. 2 months later, a woman living alone vanished under nearly identical circumstances. This time, investigators paid closer attention. Her home also showed subtle signs of disturbance. Nothing obvious, just small inconsistencies. A window unlatched. A light left on in a room she never used. As detectives dug deeper, they noticed that all reported incidents and disappearances occurred within a specific area connected by pedestrian paths and service alleys. These paths were rarely monitored and used mostly by locals who felt comfortable walking them at all hours. Attention turned to a man who worked as a delivery and maintenance contractor in the area. He was known by many residents, often seen carrying tools or packages. He had access codes, keys, and a reason to be present in and around homes. People trusted him because he looked like he belonged. When police searched his vehicle, they found notebooks filled with dates, addresses, and observations. Notes like alone, returns late, and no visitors. Some entries were marked complete. Others were circled. A search of a rented storage unit revealed personal belongings from multiple missing people. Shoes, bags, identification cards. Items that held no monetary value but deep personal significance. Everything was carefully organized. Investigators soon realized the reports of someone being inside homes without stealing anything were part of the same pattern. He had been entering houses just to observe, to learn routines, to test access points. Sometimes he stayed only minutes, other times, hours. He moved silently, carefully, leaving as little evidence as possible. Another disturbing detail emerged when police reviewed years of overlooked security footage. In several cases, a figure could be seen walking behind residents on the paths late at night, always keeping distance, always slowing or stopping when they did. He followed patterns, not people, waiting for the moment when predictability made intervention easy. A separate case uncovered during the investigation involved a woman who had narrowly avoided becoming a victim. She returned home unexpectedly one afternoon and found her bathroom light on. She was certain she had turned it off. As she stood in the hallway, she heard a soft sound, like fabric brushing against the wall. She left immediately and called police. The intruder escaped through a back door. Her report helped investigators narrow their timeline. As more evidence came to light, authorities realized the crimes extended beyond the town. Similar disappearances had occurred in neighboring areas with the same pedestrian infrastructure, the same kind of access, the same sense of safety. During interrogation, the man admitted that he preferred places where people felt comfortable, where they moved without thinking. He said routines made everything easier. He didn't rush. He waited. He relied on people dismissing small signs because acknowledging them felt inconvenient or embarrassing. Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the case was how many people had interacted with him. He had been inside dozens of homes. He had been trusted, welcomed, thanked. His presence had never raised alarms because it matched expectations. In the aftermath, residents struggled with a new awareness. They questioned memories, sounds they had ignored, moments they had brushed aside. The town installed new lighting, new cameras, new locks. But what changed most was how people listened to their instincts. This story, like so many others in true crime, is not just about what happened, but about how it was allowed to happen. About how familiarity can become a blind spot. About how danger doesn't always force its way in. It often waits to be invited through assumption and routine. True crime reminds us that awareness is not fear. It's attention. It's listening to small discomforts before they become something larger. It's understanding that safety is not guaranteed by familiarity alone. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, tell me where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware.
Hello, and welcome back. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the story you're about to hear is based on real crimes involving real people. Certain names, locations, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, but the events themselves are drawn from documented investigations, court records, and witness testimony. This story is meant to be listened to slowly and quietly. If disturbing content affects you, it's okay to stop listening now. For everyone else, get comfortable. Let your breathing slow and your body relax. And as you listen, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy these true crime stories for sleep, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. This story begins in a place designed for short stays. A roadside motel just off a major highway. The kind of place people stop at without thinking, travelers passing through, truck drivers resting for the night, families breaking up long drives. Rooms turned over quickly. Guests came and went, often without learning each other's names. For years, nothing unusual was reported. Then a woman failed to arrive at her destination. She had checked into the motel late at night and sent a message saying she was tired and would continue driving in the morning. That message was the last anyone heard from her. When police contacted the motel, staff said she had checked out early. There was no reason to question. Months later, another guest vanished after staying at the same motel. Then another. Each case occurred weeks or months apart, in different seasons, involving people from different places. The disappearances were handled by different jurisdictions, and no one initially connected them. The first clue came from an employee who had worked at the motel for several years. He mentioned that a certain room was requested unusually often, even when other rooms were available. Guests staying in that room frequently checked out early or left belongings behind. Sometimes, staff would find personal items in the trash that didn't seem like things people would willingly discard. Investigators reviewed booking records and noticed a pattern. The same employee was often working the desk when those guests checked in. He was described by co-workers as quiet, reliable, and helpful. Guests trusted him because he handled everything calmly and efficiently. He knew which travelers were alone, which rooms were isolated, and which security cameras didn't work properly. When police reviewed old surveillance footage, they noticed something unsettling. On several nights tied to disappearances, the employee could be seen walking toward guest rooms long after his shift ended. Sometimes he carried linens. Sometimes nothing at all. The footage was grainy, incomplete, and often overwritten before it could be reviewed in detail. A search of the motel uncovered a hidden maintenance corridor behind several rooms. It allowed access without passing through public areas. Inside one of the storage spaces connected to the corridor, investigators found items belonging to missing guests. Phones, identification cards, clothing. Each item had been cleaned carefully. As the investigation widened, police discovered similar cases connected to other motels along the same highway. In each instance, the suspect had worked temporarily or filled in for short periods. He moved frequently, staying just long enough to learn routines and vulnerabilities before relocating. Because motels are designed for anonymity, his presence never stood out. Another disturbing detail emerged when detectives interviewed survivors. A man recalled waking briefly in the night to someone standing near the door, assuming it was staff responding to a noise complaint. A woman remembered being offered help carrying luggage to her room, then feeling uncomfortable when the employee lingered too long. At the time, neither thought it was worth reporting. The suspect's method relied on exhaustion and trust. Travelers were tired, disoriented, far from home. They didn't question authority in a uniform. They didn't want trouble. He counted on that hesitation. In one narrowly avoided case, a guest became suspicious after noticing the employee outside her room more than once. She locked the door and placed a chair against it. In the morning, she found scratch marks near the lock. Her report helped confirm the timeline investigators were building. When the suspect was finally arrested, authorities uncovered journals documenting years of movement. Highway exits, motel names, room numbers, notes about which properties had blind spots or minimal staffing overnight. He didn't view his actions as impulsive. He described them as planned, deliberate, and quiet. Perhaps the most unsettling part of this story is how invisible it all was. Motels are transitional spaces. People don't linger. Staff turnover is high. Guests rarely speak to one another. It was the perfect environment for something terrible to hide in plain sight. These crimes didn't occur in places people consider dangerous. They happened in ordinary rooms with locked doors and flickering lamps. Places meant to feel temporary and safe. The danger wasn't loud. It didn't rush. It waited patiently in routine and anonymity. True crime often shows us that safety is not guaranteed by familiarity or convenience. That trust, when combined with exhaustion and isolation, can be exploited. And that listening to discomfort, even when it feels inconvenient, can matter. Thank you for listening. If you're still here, let me know where you're watching from tonight, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories for sleep, based on real events and told calmly, slowly, and without interruption. Sleep well tonight, and stay aware.